Welcome to the Wed Pro podcast, the podcast for Wed Pros no matter their stage. We are your hosts, Katie and Roxy, and this is the Wed Pro podcast.
Hi, and welcome back to today's episode of the Wed Pro podcast. I just wanted, really, before we get into the episode today, to just sit down and have a really honest conversation with you all, because if you've been wondering where the podcast has disappeared to lately, you definitely have not been imagining it. We've definitely had a pause with recordings, and first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for still being here, for still listening, still supporting us, because life and business behind the scenes has felt very full and heavy in every possible way over the last few months. So there's been a lot to juggle and trying to keep things moving while also not trying to lose myself or burn myself out in the process. And there have been moments over the past few months where definitely had a lot to juggle. And I also just wanted to acknowledge things that are going to sound just a little bit different around here moving forward. Roxy is going to be taking a little step back from the podcast and the business due to ill health and some personal reasons. And if I'm honest, recording without her just didn't feel right for a really long time. We've built this podcast together. She's not just my business partner, she's one of my best friends. So I think a part of me kept waiting when it came to recording the podcast until it felt normal again before hitting record. What I've come to realise is that there is not going to be a time that it feels normal, and there's not going to be a time where it feels perfect to take that action forward. It's mad when I'm kind of saying this out loud, and we've had so many conversations with this industry, and I think when Roxy needed to step back for her health, I struggled more than I really realised with what this podcast was going to look like without her kind of beside me, and at the same time juggling business and life behind the scenes as well. Have honestly felt really strange and quite chaotic over the past few months. I think I just went, if I'm being really honest, into that mode where I think a lot of business owners do, where you just try and power through everything, keep functioning as best as you can, and really try and get into that mode and almost function as if you're actually not human, trying to hold everything together all at once. And I have come to realise over this last sort of week or so that pretending everything is fine and trying to carry on as though none of it is affecting anything I'm doing actually isn't really helping anyone, and it certainly isn't helping me. It doesn't help the business, and it doesn't help the podcast, and honestly it doesn't help you guys either, because you guys listening to this podcast deserve honesty and rawness and me showing up even if it feels uncomfortable or different to what it used to feel like. And I think what I've come to realise over these last few weeks really, and through this kind of difficult period, is that if there is one thing that business teaches you, whether you like it or not, is that sometimes you have to do the hard things anyway. Often things don't feel perfect. Often things don't feel natural, like I'm doing this today. And sometimes life pulls you completely sideways and off track, but you still have to decide whether you're going to keep showing up. And I've had so many kind of ideas, conversations, thoughts, observations over these last few weeks building up in my head that I knew I wanted to share with you guys, and I knew that I just couldn't keep sitting on them for one day. And last year when I was writing my book, The Profit Shift, that forced me to really reflect on everything I've learned building businesses myself, coaching wedding professionals over the last sort of 6 years. I'm watching the patterns behind the scenes about why some businesses grow sustainably and others end up completely consuming the owner. And honestly, I wanted to bring the podcast back. I'm going to do a little run of episodes this week to just to get myself out of my comfort zone and to jump in and do the thing, even though it feels hard. B, to give you guys a little bit extra and a thank you for sticking with us through this little period. And C, as well, I really do feel that I've got more to say right now than I have. So while things might sound a little bit different, I'm really glad to be back, and I'm really glad that you're here listening with us. And I think one of the ways that I did want to come back is I don't want this podcast to just become another place where people come for noise, quick tips, surface level business advice that they forget 5 minutes later. There is enough of that out there and enough of that online. And I decided to really do the hard thing. I really want to come over the next 7 days is leave you with kind of one thing every day that kind of makes you stop and think about your business, your habits, your marketing, maybe your mindset or the way you're operating behind the scenes. So for the next 7 days, and I hope that you will stay with me until the end. I'm going to be dropping just a shorter episode every single day. They're going to be mini conversations, lessons, maybe a few little rants, who knows? Because I've been sitting on a lot of thoughts lately around business and around life and around what that looks like to build a business in 2026 and in kind of this modern world that we live in. Some of these kind of thoughts have been sitting there since writing my book last year, The Profit Shift. Some of them have come from the conversations that I'm having with you guys and the coaching conversations I've been having inside of the industry. Some of them have just come from being inside the wedding industry for the past 15 years, watching patterns and realizing that there are actually certain things that keep cropping up that are keeping incredibly talented people either stuck, overwhelmed, or completely exhausted. And I don't think that the reasons behind those things are always the things that people assume. So each episode, each little mini episode this week is going to focus on one specific area because I really want to properly unpack these conversations instead of just putting more information out there or rushing through them. We're going to talk about things like why so many wedding suppliers get stuck in kind of a survival mode inside their business, why marketing still feels so inconsistent for some people despite there being more and more information online than ever before, while sales conversations can still feel awkward, why some people are fully booked but still financially stressed, and why burnout has become normalized almost when running a business, and also why I think a lot of business owners are trying to build modern businesses but with completely outdated ways of operating behind the scenes. And the reason I do want to do these as daily episodes is because I think sometimes, and I'm hoping so anyway, that the momentum of actually being here and doing these conversations matters far much more than waiting for a perfect moment or that perfection. For me, just as much as for you guys listening out there as well. Because honestly, trust me, there have been plenty of moments recently where it would have, and still does often quite feel actually, that it would be easier for me to wait to do this until life felt calmer, until life felt a little bit easier, or definitely more put together before sitting down to record this. But I'm hoping that we're going to have some real raw conversations because I don't think that day magically comes. So this week is just about me choosing to show up anyway, and maybe a couple of you needed that reminder as well. Okay, a little note about the next episode. We're going to be doing one that I think is going to hit a nerve for a lot of people because I want to talk about why I think so many wedding businesses are trapped in kind of survival mode without even realizing it anymore. Because somewhere along the way, the industry has started confusing being busy with actually what it takes and looks like to build a sustainable business. And those two things are absolutely not the same thing. I'm going to talk to you guys about patterns I see, the thing I think most people are misdiagnosing in their business, and the questions that kind of I've been pondering on recently that's completely changed how I've started to look at growth in business. And I think honestly, once you do start to look at things in this way, you really cannot unsee it. So thank you so much for sticking with me with this episode. The next episode is going to come straight away because I'm going to drop two at once, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.